Welcome, everyone, to another Uncle Bobbie's virtual online author event. My name is Avisa Gallman. I'm with Uncle Bobbie's Coffee and Books in Germantown, Philadelphia. And tonight we have a really special featured author. He was the Obama administration's White House photographer, Florence Jackson, author of Yes, We Did, Photos and Behind-the-Scenes Stories Celebrating Our First African-American President. That book was published last fall, by Penguin Random House. He's going to be showing us some of the phenomenal photos that were captured during those years, and tell us some things about them, share some reflections about his experience in the White House. That's going to be about a 35 to 45 minute presentation, and afterwards we're going to open up the floor to audience questions. I'll ask you to use the Ask a Question button right below the screen to submit your questions. And you can purchase the book, Yes, We Did, at Uncle Bobbie's online bookshop. The button is right below the screen. This is by Yes, We Did. So I'm really excited to introduce our featured author. Without further ado, I give you Florence Jackson. One moment. There we go. Connecting. There we are. Hi, Lawrence.
Hey, Lisa, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. We're going to get through all these technical issues, and hopefully we won't lose anybody.
We will. Thank you for being here.
Yeah. So I'm going to switch over to shared screen. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Right. And I'm going to put that in focus for us.
Let's see.
Top of my video.
Okay. So can you see the screen?
Yes.
Okay. Hold. I'm going to try and get rid of that. I'm going to try and get rid of that that thing at the bottom.
Yeah.
There we go. All right. We're
Great.
good?
Yeah.
All right. So you guys can see me, but I can't see anything other than the pictures that are on the screen. So I have a beverage here that I'm drinking, and maybe my kids might be running around in the background, but you have my full attention. Thank you guys for coming. It's an honor to be a part of this virtual book event. I'm sorry we couldn't do it in person, but COVID-19 has other plans. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the night that I decided that I wanted to work for the Obama administration. Then I'm going to talk about kind of the process and the journey. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about what I look for in pictures and as a photographer. And, if you guys have questions, please put them in at the bottom. And as we get towards the end, Avisa will start asking questions, and hopefully I won't put you guys to sleep. Okay, so yes, we did. So a little bit of background about myself. I was a photographer working for the Associated Press in Washington in 2002. I moved here in 2002, and I covered features, politics, sports, George Bush. It was a great job. I mean, I really enjoyed working for the AP, and there wasn't much that could have taken me away from this job. But in 2004, November 4th, 2008, I was working at the White House, and I was covering George Bush on election night. And it was obviously election night between Senators Barack Obama and John McCain. And Barack Obama won, big surprise. But so I was at the White House, and I was there just in case George Bush wanted to read a statement or go somewhere or do something, we were there to cover him. But he decided not to do anything that night. But he did. But there was a gathering of people outside the White House, kids from GW, Georgetown, and just whoever started going to the White House in Lafayette Park, and they were celebrating and chanting and doing all the things that people do when their candidate wins. So I went out there and I started taking pictures. Excuse me. I went out there, started taking pictures, and the energy was just it was infectious. I mean, it was just really, really kind of overwhelming, and I was in awe, really. So I take my pictures, I go back to the White House, and I file my pictures, and then I'm packing up my gear for the night, and I'm headed back through Lafayette Park to the garage. And as I get through the park, off to my left, there's another man walking in the same direction, a black man. And as we get closer and closer to each other, within talking distance, he looks at me and says, "Can you believe it?" And I look at him and I say, "I know, right?" And that was all we said to each other. It was completely, and it was just this instant connection with this complete stranger. And I thought to myself, if I have a chance to work for the Obama administration, I'm going to take it, because I think what he has started was pretty special, and to be a photographer on the inside of that, covering it, would be pretty special. So I applied to be the chief photographer. Some guy named Pete Souza, I'm not sure if you guys have ever heard of him, he got the job. And I thought to myself, okay, fine. He'll have his friends or whatever, and he'll have a great, staff. So I wasn't worried too much about it, because I was still working for the AP, and I was still going to cover President Obama. And then around January, Pete reached out to me and said, "Hey, I have your portfolio here. Are you still interested in working for this White House?" And I said, "Sure, let's talk." And we had a couple of coffees, and he told me what he was looking for, and I told him what I was looking for in the job. And he eventually offered me the job. And he said the job pays about this much. I'm making a small amount here. And I said, that's a significant pay cut than what I make at the AP. I'll have to think about it. And Pete said he understood, but he said, some things are more important than money. And of course I understood that, but I said, well, I have a wife and 2 kids at home. The kids were under the age of 4 at the time. So, and my wife was a stay-at-home mom. She didn't work outside the house. So it was a risk for us to take, or a burden, so to speak. Anyway, he offered me the job. I go home, and I'm basically going to tell my wife, I got offered the job, but I'm not going to take it. So I tell her that, and she looks at me like I'm crazy. She says, "You're going to take this job. I will get a job, and we'll make it work. But you were taking this job." And, I tell that story. I always finish that story with, the moral of this story is to marry up, because, if you don't have a good partner in life, it definitely helps to have a good partner in life. Okay, so that's the story of how I became a White House photographer. And now I'm going to talk a little bit about just kind of my approach to photography and what I look for, and what has always guided me over the years in terms of photojournalism, documentary photography, just anything really. In this quote by Gordon Parks, the subject matter is so much more important than the photographer. I could not believe that more than anything in terms of me doing the job, because I feel like if you feel my presence in the photo, then I've done a disservice to the subject. So I always try and let the subject be who they are, and just document the way that it happened. So the first thing I look for in a photo is you're looking for emotion. You're looking for something that makes you dig deeper into the image. Because if you are emotionally connected to the image in some way, whether it's happiness, sadness, or just genuine a feeling towards an image, then you're pulling the viewer in that much quicker to your story. The second thing is you're just shooting information. If he's at a podium and he's talking, then that's the information. Or if she's shaking someone's hand, that's the information. It's not sexy, it's not glamorous, but it's important to convey the information of what's going on. The third thing is, if you don't have the information, if you don't have the emotion, then you try and make what I say usually is a pretty picture. You use light, you use shadow, you use a long lens, you use a wide lens, you use whatever you can to make the image more compelling to look at. So, in this picture right here, it's just a long glass with the faces looking at the president, these interns, as he's giving a talk. So those three things, emotion, information, and then aesthetics, or making a pretty picture. But I feel that the best pictures have a little bit or all three of those things going for it. Excuse me. So as we look at these pictures for the rest of the show, or for the rest of the slideshow, just kind of keep those three things in mind. Is it emotionally connected? Is it informationally connecting? Or is it aesthetically connecting to you? And hopefully, giving those three things will give you an idea of what's going on. Okay, so now I'm going to just kind of go through pictures. I'm going to stop, tell a story sometimes, or just kind of blow through them. If you have questions, like I said, type them in the bottom. You will see pictures that won't have the president or first lady or the vice president or Dr. Biden, because a lot of the times I would take pictures of things that were just around that interest me. So there's no reason for it other than I thought it was a nice moment. Okay, here we go. So one of the things the first lady, especially, but sometimes the president, would like to do is they would like to surprise their guests. And this picture here is a bunch of high school students who didn't realize that the first lady was going to come and take a picture with them. So what you're seeing is them reacting to her walking into the room. And it's always one of my favorites because, in these moments, and I've done this, I don't know how many times, but it's always interesting to see their reaction because it's always honest and true and kind of raw and kind of excited. But it's one of my favorites. This is at the Canadian State Dinner, I believe. I'm starting to lose my dinners in my head. It's been a while. This picture, so look at the boy on the left, with the young boy on the left with the glasses on. The whole choir had just sang to the president and first lady, and the young boy in the glasses had serenaded, he had a solo, and he serenaded the first lady. So after they sang, the president went up to him with his fist up, and he said, "You trying to steal my woman?" And it was just the funniest, it was unexpected and just kind of, the president, his humor is just sometimes surprising. But it was just so funny, and it's one of my favorite pictures, and this one is in the book. This is the president giving grace at Thanksgiving dinner in the Blue Room of the White House. They usually, I think every year they had family there at the White House. And it's usually 30 or 40 people that would come and they would have dinner with them. He was changing a tie between videotapes. just walking across the Rose Garden to sign a executive order. And this is one of those situations where, you know what he's going to do. So I'll back up a little bit. One of the questions is I get asked a lot is, what's a typical day at the White House? Well, typical day is we go into the office and the president's schedule is, listed sometimes weeks in advance, definitely days in advance. But the minute he walks into the office, his schedule is laid out every minute. Meetings, events, lunch, you name it, downtime, it's all written into his schedule. So this particular day, we knew that he was going to do a bill signing in the Rose Garden. And it made me think, well, how can I cover this differently if I know he's going to walk across the Rose Garden and sign this bill? So, I got up on the roof of the press office and just waited for him to walk across. Something different. I'm not sure if they read Where the Wild Things Are every time during the Easter egg hunt or Easter egg roll, but they read it quite a bit. It's one of their favorites. So one thing I'll talk about is our office makeup. We had 12 people in our office, 5 photographers. One photographer was the chief photographer, Pete Souza, and then there was a photographer assigned to the vice president, one photographer assigned to the vice president. His name was David Lineman. And then the first lady had a photographer who was kind of part-time with her and part-time with POTUS, and that was Amanda Lucidon. And then there was Chuck Kennedy and myself, who kind of rotated around everybody whenever we were needed. So, but a majority of my time was spent with POTUS, or President Obama, and then the rest of my time was spent with the First Lady, and then a very small time with Dr. Biden and Vice President Biden. This is at Buckingham Palace. This is after playing a round of golf. A couple was getting married. This one's actually in the book. They came out and said, "Mr. President, would you take a picture with us?" He said, "Sure." That's something for the history books for these guys. The president, the president and first lady were always great with kids. I don't know. I think it's just you have to have a childlike curiosity about things. And they were really good with kids. And I don't know how many times kids asked to touch his hair. And every time they asked, he would do it. So, it's, it's a cute moment. And I will say, people ask, how many pictures how many pictures did we take in our time at the White House? So we did about 9,000 images a week. That's five photographers, average about 9,000 images a week. So at the end of 8 years, we had over 4 million images in the archives. And I had about 500,000 of those images. Again, this is just finding a different angle at covering something as simple as a executive order or bill signing. I think this is a bill signing. So this was Malia when she got home from school one afternoon. A lot of the times the president would like to take walks around the south lawn of the White House, because he spends, the majority of his day inside. Whenever it's a nice day, he would love to take a meeting that was scheduled in the Oval Office. He'll take it outside in the Rose Garden, or he'll take a walk around the south lawn track or driveway of the White House. And at this particular time, he was walking around with Rahm Emanuel, his former chief of staff, and Malia was just kind of walking up the driveway from getting out of school, and they're talking, and what you don't see in this picture is after she left, they continue walking around the driveway, and it's just really sweet moment where Rahm puts his hand on his back, and I wasn't privy to what he said, but just the body language was like, man, you're in so much trouble. You have this beautiful daughter, and she's confident and charismatic, and the body language of the president was like, yes, I know, and it was really cute. And all these pictures of with the girls in it had to be approved by the Obamas to make it into the book. This is, one of my favorite images. I'm going to say that a lot, but, I do have a lot of favorites. But this was at the second inauguration, and he had just given his remarks, and he's walking back up the steps into the Capitol, and he stops and he turns around, and he goes back a couple steps to soak in the crowd one more time before going inside. And off to the left, you see the First Lady looking at him, knowing why he's doing it and what he's doing, because the president he is a person who appreciates the moment, but he was definitely appreciative of all these moments and milestones, and he never took any of it for granted. And I think it kept him not humble, but it kept him kind of grounded and in a way that I think is kind of refreshing for leaders to be. So I'll just leave it at that. This was the night of the Supreme Court decision on marriage equality. They lit up the White House in the colors of gay pride. And it was just a nice night. I mean, the crowd in front of the White House was joyous and celebratory, and I believe in the First Lady's book, she talks about how she snuck out to be a part of that. And it would have been in this area. I didn't see her, but it would have been in this area that she was out there celebrating. These are just hats of I can't remember what this is, the Navy, or I think this is Navy. Yes. Anyway, hats on the chair in the dip room, and I just thought it was a pretty picture. It was a foggy morning at Andrews Air Force Base, and these are Secret Service agents walking to the plane, getting set and before the president's arrival. And I say this all the time, but I actually mean it. I miss Air Force One. People ask me what I miss the most, and it's Air Force One because it was the only way to fly. I'll tell you a quick story. I'd been at the White House probably 4 years at this point, and I hadn't really flown commercially in about 5 years. And my wife and I decided to take a vacation. We went down to the Bahamas or something, I can't remember. And it was my first commercial flight in about 5 years, and I was just kind of appalled at how much space I had in front of my knees and how far my seat went back, and just how do people fly like this? And my wife looks at me and says, "This isn't Air Force One." So I miss Air Force One the most. This is my first viral image. This, they call it the face plant, but this is during the departure photos with staff. This is happens to be a Secret Service agent and his wife and their son. And this kid he couldn't contain his energy any longer after taking the picture. He just kind of bouncing off the walls. And the president, he knows kids, and he's like, let the kids be kids. But anyway, the picture was posted on our Flickr page at the White House, and it was, liked or commented on like 1 million times in about 24 hours. And the news outlets did interviews with this family just to get their opinion on, what their son was kind of doing. It was my first viral image. It's pretty cool. And speaking of viral and internet, the First Lady, she did a lot of social media. In fact, the President and First Lady used social media to the fullest extent of their popularity, I think. And then in this picture, you have Steph Curry and Aisha Curry doing a Vine mashup or something. I can't remember what it was, but they were great. In fact, Steph Curry has written a small section for the book, in a small section about this photo in the book. This is actress Julia Louis-Dreyfus in the vice president's office. And this one, she was playing in the HBO show called Veep. And she spent the day with him. Well, not the day, but maybe 3 or 4 hours with him. And I'll tell you one quick story. She spent the day with him, and they did all these kind of like random fun things. But he had to go to the CIA. And he's like, hey, why don't you come with me? And she's like, are you serious? He said, yeah, come on, come on. And she got in the limo with him, and they went to the CIA. And it was just, it was just pretty funny. This is State of the Union address. Secret Service. Avisa, now tell me if there are questions building up. I want questions towards the end of this.
We have one question, but I don't know, would you like to take one now or wait till the end?
Sure, I'll take it now. Okay,
the question is, what different feelings / emotions come from political photography versus other kinds of photography? That's from Jill Dean. Thanks, Jill.
Jill Dean. If it's a Jill from college. Hi, Jill. So, my approach to political photography or photojournalism it's always the same. I'm trying to get to the emotion of the story. I'm trying to get the information to the viewer, and I'm trying to draw them in with a aesthetically pleasing image. And if I can do all those things, it doesn't matter if I'm a photojournalist or a White House photographer. I'm reaching people, and I'm hoping that they understand what's going on and they appreciate what's going on in some form or fashion. But I have no. I try not to have any emotion involved with it. Now, granted, we're talking about covering the first African American president, and that's huge. And a part of me wanted him to succeed just because he was an African American president. But my approach just stays the same. So I hope that answers your question. And in this picture, again, it's, it was just the quality of the light that I saw that drew me into taking this picture. It's a server in the Red Room of the White House who, she's just looking out the window, and, who knows what she's thinking, but I love this photo. This was at the Philadelphia grocery store. That's right. I don't remember the name of it, though. I apologize. Mm-hmm. This is when the president signed the Affordable Care Act into law. And this is, literally, this is the most crowded I've ever seen the East Room before or since. I can't believe they got this many people into that room. This is the First Lady visiting a school in, I believe it's Mississippi. So one of the things the President and First Lady did early on was they started these mentor-mentee programs. The First Lady started hers first. And it wasn't really, I think they may have done 1 or 2 public events with the girls, but then afterwards they stopped doing public events and just, had the meetings, had the connection between the mentor mentees, and they did their own things, and they would come back once a month or so and kind of talk about, the first lady would talk to them about what's going on and helping and trying to keep them on track and motivated to finish school and go on to college. And the president, he had his, I think, more towards the second term, but his has now evolved into My Brother's Keeper, and or My Brother's Keeper Alliance is what it's called now. And it's just, really, they were so hardworking and so focused on helping as many people as they could, and they especially believed in the young people and helping them achieve, because they felt that obviously they are the future. So if you look at this photo, you see how he's leaning into Meryl Streep, and she's leaning back on her heel. And this is one of the few times I've ever seen this, but this is the Kennedy Center Honors Award, and one of the honorees is Meryl Streep. She walks into the blue room to have her picture taken, and she walks in, and the president says, "Meryl Streep, I'm one of your biggest fans." And he lists like 10 or 15 movies that she's been in, and he rattles them off. And I think she's really I think this is the first time that they've actually met. And she's just kind of like blown over by the fact that the president of the United States is gushing over her as a fan, when it's usually the other way around. People are gushing over him because he or her, because they're the first lady and president of the United States. So I love this photo because it's nice to see him kind of geek out and be a fanboy to someone else.
Lawrence, we have some questions, but I think that if we leave them for the end, I can actually invite the asker on the screen with you, if that's okay. So, all right. Yeah, we'll do it that.
We'll keep going.
Okay. Let's see. We have a question from Mark Coleman. I'm gonna see if you'd like to come on screen to ask it. Okay, I sent the invite. Maybe he doesn't want to join yet, but
you can just read it.
Yeah, the question is, were there any moments that you regret not capturing?
Yes. I'll tell a quick story. There was it was the end of the week, and it was a Friday night, and the president was he was doing a couple of fundraisers in the city, in DC. And
one moment. I think I got him on screen. Is that right, Mark?
Am I there yet?
Hey.
I can hear you. I can't see you.
Is this Mark Holman?
Yep.
There you go.
Hey.
What's up, brother?
How's it going, man? Good to see you.
You too.
Fantastic book. So now I got to read my question back. Were there any moments that you regret not capturing?
Yeah. So I'm telling a story. The president, it was the end of the week. I don't remember. It must have been during the second term. He was doing a bunch of fundraisers in DC, and we were at the Washington Convention Center, and he was backstage in a low lit room, sitting on this kind of plush sofa, and the introducer was talking and going over, and the president just kind of laid back in his seat, and it looked like he had fallen asleep, right? And I had this decision to make. Do I take the picture and if he sees here's the shutter go off, does he get upset with me, or do I just let him be and just let the man be tired? And so I decided not to take the picture, and I regret it because, and this was during the first term, not the second term, because knowing now he would not have cared that I took his picture while he had his eyes closed, because he really, and I'll give credit to both of them, they really wanted us to do our job and not worry about, feelings or perceptions. And So yeah, I regret not taking that picture. But if you don't have regrets as a photographer about missing an image, then you're not really doing your job, because it's always a balance between do I take the picture? Do I not take the picture? You got to get a feel for the subject and the principle and all that stuff. Good question.
Awesome. Thanks, man.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mark.
All right. So this is just president visiting an elementary school, being childlike. Marine One taking off from the south lawn of the White House. This is in the Roosevelt room. He was listening to a question during an interview. This was almost the cover of the book, but it did not say yes, we did. So we went with something else. This was the first Christmas tree lighting ceremony. Deep in thought. Okay, I'm going to read a quick section from the book, because it was one of my favorite sections, and I think it kind of fits. So the title of this section is Deep in Thought. I've done something wrong, I've worried to myself, based on the way the president was looking at me. In the early days of the administration, President Obama probably didn't remember my name, but with so many new staff faces, it was understandable. What are you doing, and why are you doing it that way? Were what his eyes were saying to me. Maybe I took a bad picture of him and it's hanging as a jumbo print in the West Wing, or he's trying to see past me and he's trying to see past me and my mistake. I know it sounds crazy, but that's what was going through my mind in the beginning. But in truth, his distant stares were never about me or any of the other White House staffers who felt the same way I did. When you're president of the United States, the leader of the free world, you have a lot on your mind at any given moment. Yet you have a packed schedule, going from event to event, trying to meet the demands of each one. One moment he was in a highly classified meeting in the Situation Room, where he was getting briefed on top secret information, and 15 minutes later he was meeting with Teachers of the Year in the Oval Office. And after a while, I realized that his quiet, neutral gaze was because he was processing whatever pressing issue was before him. Whether it was the top secret meetings on finding Osama bin Laden, the healthcare overhaul, a gushing oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico, or dealing with the Ebola crisis. His plate was constantly full. But he always carried his presidential responsibilities with grace, whatever the situation, and soon enough you'd see his signature smile and warm demeanor once again. The saying, act like you've been here before, often came to mind. The president had a way of seeming like he'd been there before and drawing you into that moment too. Okay, back to pictures. He was a basketball, player all the time, but I think he stopped playing towards the last 2 years of the presidency. Too many of his friends were blowing their Achilles, and it was just, it was just that age to be in. I don't know how many rounds of golf I covered him playing, but I did watch his handicap go from, I don't know, I guess he was just above 100 in the beginning, and by the time I stopped covering him, he was in the low 80s. This photo, if you can see in the background, Sasha's it looks like she's covering her face. This was the first turkey pardoning, and she's probably about 8 or 9 years old in this photo. And to me, when I look at this photo, she doesn't know what a turkey pardon is. And I think she's thinking that he's about to wring the turkey's neck. They're going to have it for dinner in 2 days or the next day or whatever. But in truth, I think she's just kind of wiping her face at a time in which it looks like she's covering her eyes. Anyway, this picture was up as a jumbo, and a jumbo is just a big print that hangs on the walls of the West Wing. And the president saw this picture, and he laughed, and he said it's one of his favorite pictures. Oh, I'm sorry, got this image in twice. This is the First Lady at the Democratic Convention in 2012 in Charlotte, North Carolina. This is the president walking from the South Lawn back into the Oval Office. This is the comedian actor Keegan-Michael Key. Is that right? Yeah, I think that's right. Anyway, they're practicing their skit before going to the White House Correspondents' Dinner later that night. And it was funny then, and it was funny there at the dinner. If you have the chance, you haven't seen it, go to YouTube and look it up. It's pretty funny. The president and the first lady have this amazing sense of comedic timing, both of them. And so yeah, a Secret Service agent holding the door. This was at the funeral service, a memorial service for Reverend Pinckney, one of the 9 churchgoers in South Carolina that were killed. This is the Eisenhower Executive Office building, and there's some White House staffers just enjoying a nice evening out on the balcony. This is us finishing up a trip to Russia. He's talking to Susan Rice and Ben Rhodes and Jay Carney. During an interview, again, some of these pictures have no reason or rhyme or value other than I just thought it was a nice picture. First lady hugging girls from Elizabeth Anderson. I guess it's a middle school in London. But they're at Oxford in this picture. And this story, talk about information versus emotion versus aesthetics. This picture was taken before the president boarded Marine One, headed down to Florida for the last space shuttle launch. And for some reason, before the president walked in, what we have here is Dennis McDonough, John Daly, Tom Donilon, and John Brennan, members of his national security team and his chief of staff. They were really nervous. There was just this energy about them in the room. So the president walks in, they immediately kind of collapse on him, and they're listening to every word he says, and they're talking to him. And I take 2 pictures during this entire sequence. This is the first picture that I took. And then the second picture, off to the right, you've got John Brennan. He notices that I'm in the room, and he waves me out of the room. He's like, "Get out of the room." And I'm like, okay, no problem. I leave the room, and I really don't think much of it. But it turns out that Sunday night, the president goes and addresses the nation about the capture and killing of Osama bin Laden. And it's at this moment in this picture, this moment, where he gives them the go-ahead to do the mission. So the night before, they brief the president. He says, "I'll have my decision in the morning." So this is where he gives it. So, aesthetically, it's not a very interesting picture. It's not, emotional really in any way, shape, or form. But information, it's like this is, at the moment or near the moment that he gives the go-ahead to capture Osama bin Laden. So it's like, it's a historic picture. And in fact, I think NBC ran a timeline of President Obama that weekend, and they used this picture to kind of illustrate that. Tarmac in New York City, JFK, I believe. So this is the First Lady and Ellen DeGeneres at a CBS just a couple of blocks away from her studio in Burbank, California. If you haven't seen this, go to YouTube and watch it, because this is in September of 2016. So Ellen wanted to take the First Lady to a CBS and show her what life is like, what life will be like once she leaves office. It's very funny. It's a very funny skit. This is the First Lady and Tina Chen. She's going over her notes before giving a commencement address at Virginia Tech. Here she is with the girls on a flight, I believe, to the West Coast. I think it was their spring break or summer break or something like that. Shaking kids' hands, you know, whenever she hit the rope line, you know, especially with kids, they just wanted to touch her. This is a surprise birthday party that they had for her at a restaurant, Restaurant Nora in DC. I think they're closed now, but anyway, there's a story about this in the book, and just kind of talks about how the president, you know, he appreciates the staff, but he really wants the staff to, you know, stay home or go home whenever they can to be with their families. But it's one of my favorite photos. They did yoga in the Easter. This is the Christmas taping, and I can't remember. I think they were both flubbing their words. Anyway, they got a case of the giggles, and then pretty soon the video crew and everybody in the room kind of got a case of the giggles. But we made it through. This is a uniform division, Secret Service uniform division, and he's waiting for the president to come into the Oval Office. Then he can shut that door. The Secret Service, they have a procedure for almost everything. And again, I just took this picture because I just love the way he was just kind of focused on doing his job and the way the light was hitting him. This is Valerie Boyd. She's connecting a world leader call in the Oval Office for the president. So usually there are two limousines when the president goes off campus. The first one is called Stagecoach, which carries the president, and the second one is called Spare, which usually the photographer, an assistant, the doctor rides in, and for some reason I wanted to take this picture. And this is a reporter during an event in New York City. Just again, nice lights, different colors, reflection. They were training new pilots, new HMX pilots to land on the South Lawn. So we set up a camera in the middle of the South Lawn. You know, we strapped it down, and we did a bunch of takeoffs and departures. You are looking at the first presidential tweet. I can't remember the date of this, I'm sorry, but you know, we walked into the Oval Office. They gave him the BlackBerry or iPhone. He tweeted. He handed the phone back to the ODS guy, Online Digital Services guy from the White House. And, you know, we walk into the outer Oval Office, and within like 15 minutes, he had 50,000 followers. I mean, when you tweet for the first time, you have no followers. But, you know, as people see your tweet, they start following you. And by the next day, he had over 1 million followers. So this is Alan Gross, who was the contractor who was held captive in Cuba for 5 years, I believe. And we went down for the three prisoner exchange one morning in December in 2014. And as we were leaving, and the pilot announced that we were leaving Cuban airspace, he decided to pump his fist up in the air like, you know, I'm never coming back to this country. So anyway, it was, you know, in terms of history, it was one of the more interesting and exciting events to be a part of, because we were literally part of the thawing of U.S.-Cuba relations. So one question I'm asked a lot is, you know, what are they really like? You know, what are the president and first lady really like? And I use this picture, as an example of what I think they're like. So if you can, you can see the president, the first lady smacking the president, but if you can imagine she's talking and he's standing behind her and she doesn't realize it, right? And the agent to the left is Lawrence Tucker, who's it's a departure going away party for him. And behind me are about 30 or 40 Secret Service agents and White House staff, all there to celebrate Lawrence and his departure. The president's getting there late, so the first lady starts without him, and she's talking and she's talking. And the president walks in, and nobody in the room gives it up that he's in the room. So as she's talking, he's behind her, and he's making faces and, kind of saying, oh, kind of boring or whatever. And then she realizes he's behind her. She turns around and gives him a good whack on the face. So that was all that I saw in terms of their relationship. I saw two people who were very supportive of each other, and they were in it to win it. They were together. So yeah, it was nice. It was good to witness. It's in the Oval Office before a world leader phone call, getting briefed. Vice President Biden. I'm sorry, this one's already been in too. Okay, this is the 50th anniversary of the March on Selma, and it's probably one of the top 3 speeches that I saw him give personally, and given today's climate, it really kind of rings true. The speech was about protests, and it's about making a voice for yourself, and how change through America is always done through protests. So if you ever have the chance to look up that speech, I would advise you to do it. And you can do it the text, or you can do actual video. But it really, especially in today's climate, it's talking about things that are really, really kind of prescient. Again, 2 pictures. Oh, they're different pictures, but anyway. Now, this is my last picture taken at the White House. It was January 17th. He had just did a group photo with the GSA workers, and then he shook everybody's hand, and then he kind of walked out. And this was, 3 days before he was leaving office. And, that whole week was, and this is my last day, so I'm leaving after this picture's taken. But it was just, he got emotional and talking to these guys. I think he got emotional with any person who had spent any time with him over the years and helped him do his job. So what am I doing now might be one of the questions. Well, I came out with the book, obviously, but one of my kind of side projects was to do a series of portraits on former Obama staffers, and I call them Obamanauts. And Obamanaut is someone who spent time with the First Lady or President, who has kind of gone off and done something that's positive. It's contributing to society. They're either still working in federal government, or they're working in a nonprofit, or they're doing something in the commercial world, but they're trying to help people at the same time. And this page is in the book, and you've got just a whole list of people who've done a lot of good things. A couple of authors, guy who's running My Brother's Keeper. Oh my gosh, Romana, she just finished Harvard Kennedy Law School. Harvard Kennedy, I can't remember. She went to Harvard. And I've done some work for the Obamas since leaving office. This is them looking at the presidential library renderings for Chicago. And this is, they had an 80th birthday party for Mrs. Robinson in Chicago in 2017, I believe, maybe 2018. And I think that is it. And we're at, where are we? 7 o'clock, 1 hour.
Awesome. We have some more questions, and if the audience doesn't mind, I'm gonna try to bring them up to ask them.
Okay.
So let's see.
I'll start back with the slideshow and just.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. Okay. This user didn't put their name in, but the question is here, so I'm gonna see if I can get them on, and if not, I'll just ask it myself.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to ask the question.
Okay.
Was there something that you expected when you joined the photography staff that didn't happen, or something that surprised you about working for the president?
Something that I expected that didn't happen. And what was the second part?
Or something that really surprised you about working with the president?
So no, there was nothing. It's funny. I didn't have any real expectations going into the job. I wanted to, just document as much as possible and just kind of be a fly on the wall. And I think what surprised me is them, being really easygoing, down to earth people. I was so nervous in meeting them both for the first time. I don't think I spoke a word for the first probably 5 or 6 months. I was just in the room. I'd take my pictures and I'd go. In fact, the first lady told one of my coworkers, what's up with Lawrence being so quiet, and, and that's just because I have to get a feel for people and get a sense of them. And I was just nervous. So first part of the question is I didn't have any real expectations. So everything was new and appreciated it. Second part was I was really surprised at how nice and supportive and inviting they were to me and all the other staffers.
Awesome. Okay. I have another question. Let's see. Danielle Selber. I'm going to see if I can get her on the screen.
Okay. Now I can't see. Should I exit out of the slideshow?
Would you like to? I can help you do that.
Sure.
Okay. Okay, so that video is closed. Can you see me, or can you see the screen?
I can see you. Yes.
Okay, good. Let's see. Maybe I'm just going to try to keep inviting people on screen who would like to ask a question. It's hard to indicate here if you'd like to come
read the questions. That's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
This question is, were there any moments that were particularly awkward to photograph because of the gravity or tenseness of the atmosphere and situation?
Oh.
See, this is
Hi, nice to meet you.
I didn't ask it.
Thank you. Yeah. So there were moments where she would visit, Gold Star families, mothers who'd lost their sons or daughters in the war. And I remember there was this one instance where I was taking pictures and she was having this roundtable discussion, and one of the guests, he felt uncomfortable me being there because I was a photographer. He thought I was, I guess, a part of the press or something. And she looked at him and she says, "No, that's Lawrence. He's with our staff. He's like, he's like a brother. Don't worry about him." And I thought that was really nice of her to set him at ease. And he did. And then he kind of expressed what he was really thinking once he realized that I wasn't a part of the press. But those are tough discussions, and I never take it for granted. And if anyone has any problem with me being in the room, I always walk out of the room.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks. Let's see if we can get the timing right.
Yeah.
Try.
Questions on the side here. Anderson, Katie Merkel, Sarah Dykstra. Oh my God, Susie, Susie's a neighbor. She's like right across the street.
Wow. Let's see. I think there's, I don't know, this is a strange delay with bringing people up.
That's
But
okay.
there are quite a few questions. Let's see. Was there a moment in the presidency or a corresponding photo that you think history will always remember, like a let them eat cake or mission accomplished kind of moment?
They will remember about President Obama's administration?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Or a moment a moment that you photographed, or
yeah. So the picture of him walking across the Edmund Pettus Bridge. Is that Tracy? Is that?
Yeah.
Hey, Tracy, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. So the moment they're crossing the Edmund Pettus Bridge, that photo has played in a lot of places, and rightly so, because it is a kind of like a historic moment. And if you remember that photo, it's off to the right. You've got the original foot soldiers, the people who 50 years ago were baton cannon or water cannon and attacked by dogs. And in the center of the photo, you have the first African-American president, First Lady, and John Lewis, who were the result of all their work of the years of civil rights and voting rights. And then off to the left, you've got Sasha and Malia, who are the next generation who are going to, lead us to hopefully better days. So that photo, it always comes up as, one of my favorites because it's prolific in the world of imagery about President Obama, but it's also poignant in the fact that, the rights that were fought for are still kind of being fought for today. So yeah, that picture, I think, for me, kind of symbolizes a lot of his presidency.
Wow. I think Tracy actually has a different question. So.
Oh, okay.
So
Yes.
Lawrence, more about the mechanics and how do you set the ground rules with the president, right? Of what's inbounds, out of bounds. You mentioned being silent for the first few months, but is there a conversation, or did Pete Souza kind of give you the, hey, here's how this works? Would love to just know how that works.
Yeah, that's a great question. So Pete, he did so many good things. Hey, Beth. So he really kind of sat down with the president and said, I'm here to document your presidency. We want to cover the first 5 minutes of every meeting that you have, the first 5 minutes of every world call leader that you have. If you shake anybody's hand, if you ever step out in public, we want to document that. And that those rules that he kind of set in place helped kind of establish what we were doing in the photo office. And, the president, to his credit, and the first lady, they allowed people to do their jobs. It's like, you're here to complete your mission is kind of what they said. Yeah. But I will say in the beginning, the president, he didn't quite understand why so many pictures were taken. He had his pictures taken all the time, and one of his famous lines is, "One of those must have worked," and he was on to the next thing. But there was a picture of him looking at the jumbo prints in the West Wing, like a day or two after the first inauguration, and he was like looking at them, and he's like, "Oh, these are really amazing images." And I think it kind of clicked with him, like, okay, these guys are here to document every aspect of the presidency for history's sake. So then he just kind of, he let it go, and we just did our job. And to Pete's credit, he hired photographers and editors who had news background, in their careers. So it made us. We all spoke the same language. We all had the same understanding. So it was a very good way to start and finish. Good question. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I'm hopefully invited the next question asker on screen with enough time. Let's see. Is that Katie Merkel?
Yeah, I see it. Between the first and second term, do you feel your approach to the subject matter or job changed? Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Katie, Katie's a photographer friend of mine, so she's in trouble for this. No, no, it didn't change. I mean, I think the sad truth is that, you know, once you've done 1 year at the White House, then you're repeating every year after that. And what I mean by that is I covered 8 Easter egg rolls. I covered 8 G7 or G20 summits. So the challenge is to try and keep it fresh and try and do something different, slightly different every time something came around for a second, third, fourth, or fifth time. But my approach, it didn't change. I mean, I was always trying to look for the emotion. I was always trying to capture people's attention, and hopefully I was successful at that. But yeah.
Okay. Do you want to
say again?
Would you like to choose the next question?
Sure. Let's see.
In the box, and also we have a few on the sidebar in the chat.
Well, that's what I'm looking at.
Yeah.
Okay. Catherine says, "What, if anything, do you miss the most?" Well, I already said Air Force One because it was really just the best way to travel. I mean, because, you know, we would get on the plane, they would know our seat, and they would bring us our favorite beverage. You know, they would, you know, it was just first class all the way. The other thing was the White House medical office. You know, those guys kept us running, basically. If you had an injury or anything, you know, they patch you up and send you off back into the field. But, you know, probably more than anything, it's the people that I worked with, because we were just working really hard and keeping our head down, and, you know, we were traveling, seeing parts of the United States, parts of the world that we typically would not have seen. And it was a good cause, and we're working for a good president. So, yeah, all those things wrapped up, but, you know, it was just a good time. Thank you, Catherine.
I'm gonna say we've got time for maybe one more question.
Okay.
And there's one that's been submitted to the question box, which is, has there ever been a moment in your career where you felt that you could be in personal danger while working as a photographer?
In my career or at the White House?
The question doesn't specify, but if there's something that comes to mind.
Well, I'll do kind of a combination. So when I was at the AP covering, I did a trip with Vice President Cheney. We went to Islamabad, we went to Iraq, and I can't remember the city in Pakistan. We landed in Islamabad, but we caught helicopters to the city in Pakistan somewhere. Anyway, they were really nervous about having him out there. And we were in this helicopter, and there was a gunner on the back of the helicopter who was just a ball of nerves. I mean, this guy his head was on a swivel, and his head being on a swivel made everyone else nervous. And when we landed, you know, I don't know what was going on, but they really rushed us out of there pretty quickly. I think maybe word had gotten out that we were there, and they just wanted us out of there. So that was, you know, I had a bulletproof vest on, and I had a helmet on, and all this stuff, and I was nervous, but, you know, I'm here.
Wow. Okay. Well, thank you so much for everything. This was, I feel for me, there were moments looking at those photos that made me really smile, made me a little tear, and it was really nice to feel a moment of levity and just remembering joy during these really tumultuous times.
Good.
I'm sorry we didn't get to all the questions, but I'm so grateful to everyone who participated.
If you guys have any questions, just send them to any of my social media accounts, and I'd be happy to answer them. Oops. Did you guys hear that?
Video is getting a little. Could you repeat that, please?
I said, if anyone has any questions, they can find me on social media, Jack Images at Instagram, or I think that's probably the best way. And just send me the questions. I'd be happy to answer them.
All right. Thank you so much. I want to just thank everyone that participated, and thanks so much, Lawrence. This was really amazing.
Thank you, guys. And thanks to all my friends who came out for this. I appreciate it.
I'd like to thank also Penguin Random House, and just remind you guys that the book is available at our online shop. And if you'd like to support Uncle Bobbie's a little differently, we do have a GoFundMe. That's gofundme.com/WeStillHere. And we're so grateful to everyone. Thank you so much.
All right.
Thanks,
Take care,
Lawrence.
guys. Bye.
Have a good night.